ask that you guys move forward, inshallah, because I want to talk to you guys a bit more today, as we normally do. Close. Nobody far away. If you're on the chairs, it's okay. It's okay, because you guys are close enough, alhamdulillah. Yeah. Okay, طيب. So, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, wa ba'd. So, let's get started. So, today, inshallah ta'ala, we'll be talking about double intention. Okay, double intention. Now, what do you think we're going to be talking about when you hear double intention? What are we talking about? What are your thoughts? Yeah.
So getting two rewards and doing one action. So for example, Tahiyatul Masjid and let's say the two rakat of Fajr.
Okay, exactly. That's what we're going to be talking about. Sorry, that's not what we're going to be talking about only. That's one of the things that we're going to be talking about. So there's this concept, right, that some of the scholars mentioned that you can have a double intention and do one deed and get the reward for both of those actions that you intend. So for example, I can have an intention for one ibadah, and I can also have an intention for another ibadah and just do one ibadah and get the reward of both of them, right? Where both of them are valid. Okay, how is this possible? When is it okay to do it? When is it not okay to do it? We'll talk about that, okay? Now it is, a long topic. There are a lot of details, right? I'll try to summarize it as best as I can, inshallah. And we're going to talk about something else. Okay, we're going to talk about something else first. We're going to talk about, is it okay to have an intention for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also intend the dunya as well? Alright, that's a very important topic, because sometimes, okay, let's say for example, I want to pray salah, right? And I also want to, for example, I want the people to see me pray. And I want them to praise me. I want them to like me. Is it permissible for me to do that, right? So obviously, that's obviously wrong from what you guys have learned and heard of. But in what cases would it be permissible, right? Is it okay for me to now pray salah and then have an intention for people to see me, but for the intention of them learning from me, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." He says, "Pray as you've seen me pray." So when the Prophet ﷺ prayed, he told the Sahaba to, watch me pray and learn from how I pray. So he knew that the Sahaba were watching him. And he commanded them to basically watch him when he's praying. So as he's praying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahaba are watching. So is it okay for me to do the same thing, for me to have that intention to pray, and for example, my family member or somebody from the Masjid, one of my students, or one of my friends, one of my teachers, whatever the case is, I want them to see how I'm praying so that they can benefit from that. Right? So where do we draw the line between those two things? Why would it be okay to do it to teach someone, but not okay for me to get fame and status? Right? Where do we draw the line? So that's what we'll be talking about first. All right. So those two areas, right? Those two particular issues. Can you intend more than one actions, right? More than one actions in while doing one act of worship? The fuqaha, they speak about this issue, right? The scholars of fiqh, they deal with the issue that the brother asked about, right? So, for example, can I make a niyyah for tahiyatul masjid and pray the sunnah of Fajr when I come in to the masjid to pray Salat al-Fajr, right? Or do I have to pray Tahiyat al-Masjid 2 rak'ahs and then pray another 2 rak'ahs for the sunnah of Fajr, right? So the fuqaha, they're going to deal with this issue. The scholars of fiqh, they're going to deal with this issue. But the issue that I told you guys we're going to talk about first, and that is, can you intend something else along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The scholars of aqeedah, of Islamic belief, they speak about this issue. Right, so we're going to talk about having a double intention from an aqeedah perspective, right? From a theological perspective, and then we'll speak about having multiple intentions from the perspective of Islamic jurisprudence, right? So let's get started. So when we talk about the niyyah from the aspect of aqeedah, we must understand that all of our acts of worship must be sincerely done for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No difference of opinion about this. This is a matter of ijma', consensus. We all know that your worship has to be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? I don't think anybody is going to have any differing with what I just said, right? And there's that very famous hadith, right? And we went over this hadith, alhamdulillah, in one of our sessions of Monday Night Boost last year, right? Where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us the actions are only by their intentions, and everyone will have what he has intended. So whoever intends Allah and His Messenger, he will have Allah and His Messenger. And whoever intends the dunya, he has a niyyah for the dunya. He intends to have the worldly life. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ gave an example. He said, for example, a man makes hijrah. He migrates for the sake of Allah. when you migrate for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're doing it to please Allah. But the Prophet ﷺ tells us that whoever makes hijrah, he migrates, not for the sake of Allah, right? But he migrates to get married to a woman, for example, right? Or he migrates to get some money, some wealth, right? There's some business in the other land, and he wants to move to the other land to get some business, right? To make some money. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that his hijrah is to what he has made hijrah to. In other words, he will get what he has intended. If he's intended to get money, that's all he's gonna get, right? So everybody is clear, with this hadith and other texts where Allah He says, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينِ in Surah Al-Bayyinah. Allah He says, the people have only been commanded to worship Allah sincerely. Right? قُلِ اللَّهَ أَعْبُدُ مُخْلِصًا لَهُ الدِّينِ. Right? Allah says in Surah Al-Zumar that say to them that I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, making sincere for Him my religion. So everybody is clear on this, that you are a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to worship Allah alone, no one else. Right? So your ibadah, one of the main conditions of your ibadah is for it to be sincerely done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the question is you guys tell me if this is okay or not. Okay? I want to memorize Quran so that everybody will hear, mashallah, hafiz. Look at this brother. Is that okay or not? Is that okay or not? Okay, say it, right? It's okay, because listen, don't say, oh, Allahu Alam, I don't know. The scholars mentioned that when it comes to a discussion, when you're learning, you can answer yes or no for the sake of the discussion. It's not like you're making a fatwa, you say, oh brother, I don't know, so I'm not going to. No, say something, right? Try to, engage in the discussion, right? So of course, this is wrong, right? For example, there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim, a hadith Qudsi, right? Where Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءِ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ I'm the one who doesn't need any partners the most. Allah is the most free of needing any partners. For example, I need somebody to help me out, right? Someone who's a bit strong may need help a bit less. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He's the most free of needing any help, right? In other words, He's the one who needs the least amount of help. He doesn't need any help, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that من أشرك معي that من عمل عملا أشرك معي فيه غيري تركته وشركه. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in this hadith in Sahih Muslim that whoever does any deed and he associates with me other than me, I will abandon him and his association. Very clear. So in other words, if I'm doing my ibadah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it should be only done for Allah, according to this hadith, right? So if I'm doing, if I want to memorize Quran, I want to memorize Quran, but at the same time, I'm doing it for Allah, but at the same time, I'm doing it so that, this girl is going to marry me. I want her to hear that, mashallah, I memorize the Quran. I mean, of course, your chances of getting higher, maybe higher, right? You may not have, the nicest job, the nicest car, the nicest place, but at least you memorize the Quran, right? So you could use that. What if somebody wants to do that? All you guys are going to say what? No, right? For example, there's a hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. It's in Sahih Muslim as well. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us about 3 people who will be burned in Jahannam first. Before the one who worships idols is going to be burned, these 3 people will be burned in the fire first. Who are they? Number 1, the Prophet mentioned, is someone who learned the Quran and he recited the Quran. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises him on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah will ask him that, what did you do for my sake? The man will say, oh Allah, I read Quran for your sake. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say that you have lied. And then the hadith mentions, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that he's going to be dragged on his face and thrown into Jahannam. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in this hadith, Allah will say to him that you have lied, that you only recited the Quran so that it may be said that you are a qari. And you only taught people knowledge so that it may be said that you're an alim, you're a scholar. So it's very clear, these texts are very clear. It should only be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But my question is, if somebody wants to give sadaqah, let's say it's a fundraiser, right? It's a Masjid Eesa fundraiser, we're raising money for the expansion project, and there's somebody, wherever we're having the fundraiser, he raises his hands, he's like, I want to give $100,000. And he wants to do it for everybody to see. Wow, mashallah, what a generous guy. Obviously, everybody can agree this is wrong. But now my question is, what if somebody, for example, they want to do an ibadah? For example, let's say they want to fast. And even with the non-Muslims, there's this whole big thing about weight loss now. Everybody's doing intermittent fasting. Everybody's doing intermittent fasting. All of the fitness people in the fitness industry, they're pushing for this fasting. Even the non-Muslims, they're fasting to lose weight and to, better their health. So many studies have come out showing that fasting is the best way. Like back in the days, bodybuilders and these fitness, people, fitness gurus, they used to say you need to eat like 6 or 7 small meals throughout the day. Nowadays, nobody's really saying that anymore, right? They're all saying that you should eat one big meal, right? And you should fast the whole day. Or eat 2 meals, whatever the case is. Yeah.
No, going with fasting, even fasting.
Well, just use the mic.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So what I was saying with intermittent fasting is really interesting because even ancient civilizations, they would be intermittent fasting very regularly as well because, there wasn't much livestock. Obviously, food wasn't high production. And if you actually look at it, when you're fasting, you actually build more endurance and you actually build more strength like that.
Excellent.
And think about the Prophet ﷺ, and think about the Bedouins as well, or think about people that live in, especially I looked at that, even like mainland China, like those very rural villages.
Yeah.
Like the reason why a lot of them their I guess their longevity and why like they're able to climb like mountainous regions because they train their body in such a sense where they can climb these places without eating or drinking for like certain amount of time. So.
Absolutely. So let's say, for example, somebody wants to follow fitness advice. He's like, you know what? If I'm not going to be eating for the whole day, might as well fast. So when he's fasting, he's not just, for example, let's say he wasn't doing this fitness thing, he wouldn't have been fasting. But he's like, you know what? I want to make a double intention. Obviously, I'm staying away from food because of fitness, but I also want to stay away from food and drink because I want to fast. So would it be fun to do that? Yes. What do you think? Why or why not?
Well, shouldn't the primary intention be to please Allah? Like, shouldn't it be for the sake of Allah first, and then, you can have, I guess, an intention to also like be healthy? Like,
okay. Well, my question is, what if I want to fast, but I want people to like me as well? Why is it wrong for people? Why is it wrong for me to fast and want people to like me, but it's okay to fast and have better health? Why is that okay? Both are things from the dunya.
well, I mean, the first one would be Riya, right? It would be showing off. So
Okay, good. Showing off, good. So we have specific texts about showing off. Showing off, period, is totally wrong in all of its forms, right? So for example, the example I gave you guys a few moments ago, where for example, if I'm praying and I want people to see me pray, so that they can learn. That's obviously nothing wrong with it, because the Prophet ﷺ did that. So if your intention is not to show off, but to benefit the people, then that's not showing off. You see what I'm saying? You're not trying to get anything from them. Rather, you're trying to give them something. You're trying to share the knowledge with them, right? So if you do it with an intention of having the people benefit, then there's nothing wrong with that. For example, the scholars talk about this. If you recite Quran with a beautiful voice, mashallah, you want to be like Abdul Basit. You're reciting mashallah and you're going at it, and then somebody passes by and you want that person to say mashallah, what a great reciter. Obviously, is that right? No, nobody's going to say that's right, because obviously that person wants to show off, right? So that's very clear. The Prophet ﷺ, he called showing off a shirkul khafi, it's a minor shirk, a shirkul asghar, it's a minor shirk. It's like polytheism. You're not really worshiping the person, but there is that person that is, that has infiltrated your niyyah, your intention. So now your desire to do the action is not just for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's to show off. So showing off is clear, right? But what if I want to recite Quran with a beautiful voice so that someone may fall in love with the Quran? Right? Let's say, for example, let's say they don't want to listen to Quran. They would rather listen to music. Let's say you're at home with your brother, or with your sister, or with your wife, or your husband. And you know what? You know that they don't like to listen to the Quran. They want to listen to Lil Wayne. Or who are these other, Drake, or Nicki Minaj, or these other people, right? This person at home, your wife, husband, whatever the case is, that person at home wants to listen to this. So you know what? You say that you know what? I want to recite Quran beautifully, not to show off, not that they're going to like me, but I want to show them that the Quran is beautiful. Is it permissible to do that? Of course, right? Because now you're not doing it to show off. Right? So when it comes to intending other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is clear that showing off in all of its forms, haram. Right? Because the Prophet ﷺ specifically mentioned showing off. Is everybody clear on this? Great. So excellent. So back to my original question that I asked. When you fast, right? When you fast to get like a health benefit, okay, when you fast to get a health benefit, it's not the same as fasting for people to like you, because that's clearly showing off. Is everybody clear on this? Right? Some people, they may come up to you and be like, yo, akhi, you know what? I'm fasting today. I prayed, my tahajjud last night. Mashallah, I'm just so righteous. You know, like get on my level, right? Obviously, there's a problem with that, right? I think that's very clear. Now, if we say that it's clearly wrong to show off with fasting, right? Then the question is it really okay to want health benefits? Is it really okay to want health benefits? Like, where do you draw the line? What if I want to recite Quran so I can get money? Right? Right? If it's okay to get health benefits, what if I recite Quran with the intention to get money? What do you guys think? Is that okay or not? You know, sometimes people, they come to an event, to like a conference, and they obviously know, or for example, sometimes they may stipulate, I'm only going to come to your conference. There's a sheikh, a reciter, he says, I'm only coming to your conference if you pay me $500. Is that okay? He has to travel far as well, right? But obviously the travel is not going to cost $500, right? So we're not just talking like, oh, okay, he may be covering his expenses. No. Right? Let's say it's just $100 to travel there, right? Going to and back. But $400 extra, right? He wants $500. And it's a big conference too, of course, right? And he's somebody that obviously is qualified to recite. Would that be okay? If it's okay to fast and get health benefits, why is this wrong? Tell me. Anyone? Come on, I want you guys to think here. Come on. I don't want to be the only one speaking. Yes, okay, yeah.
Well, I mean, how is he supposed to make money? Like, how's he supposed to make a living? Because I know obviously like people can, right, charge to give like Islamic knowledge, right, for example.
But the Quran, I mean, it's like it's like an hour trip going, hour trip coming back. He could do it after work. He can work as well. Right? It's just reciting. He's just going to be reciting on the stage for 5 minutes. But he's a good reciter too, right? He's really good, mashallah. Like the best in the country, for example, right? So, like what I'm saying is, where do we draw the line? Yeah.
I mean, okay, so here's what I think, right? I mean, I realize there's always a lot of like heated discussion when it comes to that topic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, if they're coming, let's say, okay, even though like, let's say, they're maybe flying from like, that's like a 1 hour flight or something, it doesn't cost much money.
Yeah.
But I think that we have to also take in consideration about his expenses, his needs as well. And I think it should be compensated. I mean, like, because at the end of the day, like, people do need money. I mean, there's no doubt about that, right?
But $500. And listen, I'm not talking about something unrealistic.
Right.
Like, this is realistic.
I mean,
$500 for a conference?
will he be like okay to like leeway, or is it $500 just like that's his price and that's it?
Let's say that's his price. He's like, take it or leave it. There's a bunch of other reciters you can get.
I mean, I would get another reciter probably.
You get another reciter.
Probably get another reciter.
Okay.
But then you know what? Then it goes the same thing for FCAT is like for Islamic knowledge technically also, because why do you like? Here's my question. So why do you charge money for?
I'm not the one charging.
You're not the charging.
I'm not the one doing the charging. Allahu Alam, how much is being charged?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, like, because it's a course, obviously.
That was smart.
It is a course. And if you think about it, because, at the end of the day, people do have to travel. People, we do have to take into consideration people's needs. I think that if it should be done solely because of like how much is actually should be like spent on the trip. I don't think.
So he can't get any more money than what is necessary for the trip.
I think so also. I think that's kind of fair.
So he should basically be coming for free.
For free?
I mean, it's basically for free because it's covering his expenses that he paid.
Mm-hmm.
It's covering the plane ticket, the car ride, the gas, whatever. So, and he's not getting anything more? He can't get anything more?
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's how I feel.
Okay, this is very tricky. And listen, this is an issue of difference of opinion, right? For example, there's some of the scholars, like for example, Ibn Qudama, right? He wrote a book called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, right? So Ibn Qudama, he's very strict on this issue, right? He mentions a bunch of examples, like even fasting. If someone wants to get physical strength from fasting, and he mentions some other examples, he says all of these issues, right? In all of them, he says that فَقَدْ خَرَجَ عَمَلُهُ عَنْ حَدِّ الْإِخْلَاصِ. He says that the limit of ikhlas, if someone does these things and they have intention for anything from the dunya, whether like even if it's health benefits, he says that this removes the action from ikhlas. Totally. So you find that there's and this is a minority view, by the way. The vast majority of the scholars, they say it's permissible to intend things from the dunya, but with conditions. It's not absolute. Yeah.
Weren't there times where the Prophet ﷺ would, let's say, he would wake up, right? and he wouldn't be fasting initially, like a voluntary fast, and he would find that there's no food in the house, and then he would start fasting. Like, weren't there instances like those? Like,
Yeah, excellent.
yes. So how would Ibn Qudama reconcile that?
Okay, so the thing is, the Prophet ﷺ, he's not really, like, for example, the hadith that you're referring to, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he woke up and then he asked Aisha radiallahu anha, he said that, "Oh Aisha, is anything in the house?" And she said, "No." So he said, فَإِنِّي إِذًا صَائِمٌ, then I'm fasting in that case. So the scholars extrapolate a principle from that as long as someone wakes up, and it's a like a recommended fast, and they have done nothing before starting the fast that would break the fast. They didn't eat for the morning, or they didn't drink or do anything else that would break the fast. Then they can start the fast later in the day, like in the morning, right? According to this hadith. But my question is that, okay, from this hadith, why would there be a problem? Even if we take the view of Ibn Qudama, why would there be a problem? The Prophet ﷺ is, he's not really intending, like explain what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, because if there were food, right, maybe the Prophet ﷺ would not have fasted that day, right?
So what exactly is he intending along with fasting?
I mean,
pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to have that intention, definitely, right? Yeah. Okay.
Let's switch the scenario if you will.
Okay, so the brother, he says, all right, just repeat what you said. Okay, طيب, all right, no problem. So he said, what if somebody cooks some food and you really don't like the food, right? And you want to be like, you know what? I'm not even gonna eat that, and I'm gonna fast. My question is, can't you just not eat the food and not fast? So why does fasting have to come from not eating the food? You could just not eat, and then eat something else later and not have any intention. You don't want to. Okay, all right, fine. You want to say that you're fasting not to offend the person. Okay, right, but okay, so one may argue that someone does have, an intention like that. And that's the point, is that, listen, we don't agree with the view of Ibn Qudama, right? Because there are many examples of textual evidence, like we have many texts that show that you can have an intention for the dunya. So that's why Ibn Qudama's view is a bit extreme here, right? The vast majority of scholars, they say you can intend the dunya. You can fast and want to have medical benefits, right? For example, the doctor tells you that, listen, on Monday morning, you're going to have an operation. Or no, let's say like Monday afternoon, you're going to have an operation. Now you wake up Monday morning, you're like, listen, the doctor tells you have this operation, and he also tells you that you can't eat or drink anything. Sometimes they tell you that, right? So before the operation, Monday afternoon, you can't eat or drink anything. You're like, you know what, I'm going to fast anyway, right? I'm just going to fast, right? So in that situation, the majority of scholars would say it's fine. But there's certain conditions. Right? So what are those conditions, right? So before we move on to the examples, I'm going to give you those conditions, right? So the condition is that it's permissible if the primary intention is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's use the fasting example, because I think everybody understands that, right? And then we'll move to other examples. I have a lot of examples. So you fast and you also want to lose weight, right? So for that to be permissible, you have to want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala way more than you want to lose weight. Right? If you wanna lose weight more than you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you have an issue. Right? Then that condition will not be fulfilled. And also the second condition is that the benefit must naturally come along with the ibadah. Right? The benefit must naturally come along with the ibadah. So for example, whether you intend to lose weight or not, just by fasting alone, it's gonna happen. Right? For example, another example is making ghusl and having the niyyah to cool off. Whether or not you intend to cool off or not, will the cooling off happen? It will happen. So if the benefit of the dunya naturally comes with the action, without even trying, right? Then it'll be permissible to intend that particular benefit, right? Now there's other things as well. There's other examples where there may be like a certain problem with this. For example, for someone to recite Quran, is that a benefit that naturally comes with reciting Quran that you get paid for it at a conference? Not exactly, right? So even it's like some scholars don't mention this condition, right? They say that it's general as well. It could be anything, like any dunyawi benefit, any benefit from the dunya, you can take that benefit as long as you want to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more. So this one scholar, for example, Abdurrahman ibn Nasr al-Sa'di, he mentions certain situations, right? The first situation he mentions is if a person only wants to do it for the sake of Allah. The first situation, or the first scenario, is if someone wants to do it purely for the dunya. Or they want to do it for the dunya more than they want to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this situation, the scholars agree that this person will not have any reward. Right? This person will not have any reward. Right? So and then we would interpret this situation according to those ayat that mentions that a person's deeds would be nullified. Right? For example, there's a verse where Allah He says that man kana yuridu al-hayat ad-dunya wa zinataha. Whoever wants the hayat ad-dunya, whoever wants this life and its beauty, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He says later, like a verse later, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ لَيْسَ لَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَى النَّارِ. These people that just want the dunya, all they will have in the akhirah is fire. That's it. They will have no reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So when someone wants the dunya only, they don't want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all. Right? Or they want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but their desire to please Allah is very small, but they really want the money. They don't really care about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that much. In this case, they're doing their deed primarily for the dunya. So this, in this situation, even if it's a health benefit from fasting, they don't really care about the fasting at all. Right? And they really want the health benefit, but they don't really care about the fasting. In this situation, then it will be an act that will be rejected. It's not really done sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second scenario is for example, let's say there's someone, he wants to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he wants the dunya benefit just as much. So it's like if you could divide his desire, 50% is for Allah, and he also wants 50% for the health benefits. Here the scholars have some difference of opinion. Right? You have some scholars who say that absolutely not. He must primarily do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And other scholars, they say that the deed would not be rejected. For example, Abdurrahman as-Sa'di, he said that the deed will be accepted, right? According to his speech, he said that the deed would be accepted, but it's a deficient deed. Other scholars like Ibn Uthman said it will be rejected, right? So obviously, this is a tricky situation. But how would you be able to even, judge that in the first place? Like, could you think that someone could possibly be thinking that, you know what, I want to go make a ghusl right now, but half of my intention is to please Allah, and the other half is nobody can really determine the amount, right? So this is a bit unrealistic, right? But the third situation is when someone has ikhlas for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because there's going to be a dunya benefit that's going to come along with it as well. For example, someone, he wants to recite Quran at the conference. And he doesn't stipulate the money. But he knows that, they may give him a gift or something. Would it be haram for him to accept it if it just comes to him without him even asking for it? In this situation, no. If he's, only if he's primarily doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because listen, if we say no then that means you can't work as an imam. You can't teach people as a profession. You can't teach people Islamic studies as a profession. You can't teach Quran as a profession. And think about this realistically. How are you going to find an imam that's going to be there consistently for the community if this is not his full-time job? Perhaps there's a situation where it is possible, but realistically, right? For example, if someone is volunteering under normal circumstances, they may give precedence to their own job. For example, if you have an after-school, Quran memorization program, and it's every single day, how are you going to have a full-time job if you're going to come at 4 p.m. and leave at 7 p.m.? How is that even possible? So because of that, the scholars mentioned that it is permissible to get some money or some, something in return to suffice you. And there's dalil for this. There's proof and evidence for this, and we'll mention some of those examples as well, inshallah. Okay? So as long as you want to do it primarily for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And you also intend for a benefit to come to you, but that's not your primary objective. You want to go study Islam, but you also want to get a degree, right? You want to get a degree from the College of Islamic Studies, right? Is it, should you say that, it's haram to get this degree? I don't want the degree. I just want to learn the knowledge, and then you have nothing? No, right? You can get, you can intend to get the degree or the certificate, right? But your primary objective must be to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes, I'm telling you, you have people that go overseas in Mecca, Medina, wherever, and perhaps some of them are only doing it for their certificate. They want to come back so people can say, MashaAllah, he graduated from Medina, he graduated from Mecca. Obviously, is this person primarily doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No. So that's that's why when it comes to seeking knowledge, it is something that is very scary, because you have some of the Salaf, some of the early Muslims like Sufyan al-Thawri, he says that مَا عَلَجْتُ شَيْئًا أَشَدَّ عَلَيَّ مِن نِّيَّتِي. He said that I have not tried to cure anything more difficult upon me than my intention. So, so there's a fine line, because once we say, oh, you can intend this, it's a very fine line now, right? You really have to be checking yourself, right? So are you leading the salawat as an imam? Are you teaching Islamic studies? Are you teaching Arabic? Are you teaching Quran for the money? Or are you primarily doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the money is just there to help you do the job better? So you don't have to find another full-time job, right? So really, that's a fine line that you have to draw. Now there's a fourth scenario that the scholars mention, right? First scenario is when somebody really only wants to do it for the sake of the dunya. Or they want to do it for the sake of the dunya and they want to do it very little for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this case, the action is nullified. They're not sincere. Second scenario is when it's 50-50. And obviously that's kind of impractical. Third situation is the situation where it's okay, where the majority of your niyyah, the primary intention that you have is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you can still accept some of the benefits of the dunya that come along with that. Right? It's perfectly fine to do that. And the fourth scenario that the scholars mention is the most perfect. And that's for someone to not accept anything from the dunya. This is the purest thing that you can do. Right? And the scholars mentioned that this has even more greater reward than you intending anything from the dunya. You only want to do it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That you don't even care what reward comes to you in this dunya from that deed. You only want to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously this is the safest thing to do. Because like I said, even if the third scenario, even though it's okay, right? It's still something that you have to beware of, right? Whereas if you do your action for no benefit from the dunya, you don't want anybody to see. You want to do it in privacy, right? You want to teach Quran for free. You want to be the imam for free. You want to teach for free. That's best. So that there's no opportunity for you to now fall into danger, right? This is the most perfect, right? And the reward of someone in this scenario is even greater, right? So does anyone have any questions? Yeah. I'm going to give you some examples, right? Yeah.
No, I was just relating to what you were saying about, when the scholar mentioned that the hardest thing is to keep your intentions pure. And I think that, how you mentioned that the best, and you said the best thing is, I know, to do it primarily for the sake of Allah, but also giving out the services, I guess, for free, you can say. And I guess that's the best way of doing it because it avoids, like showing off. And I think that's very pure in its way. And also there's this one dua that I was watching a video, and it's very interesting because actually the guy, the way the video started was like, he started out by saying how there's this one man. I don't remember the full details, but there's this one man, and he was trying to understand Islam and trying to understand what it is about. So I think he went to I forget where he studied abroad, but he had this like one opinion on something, and he was just very adamant on it, and it got up to the point where he started to become very like arrogant, where he said that, I'm right, I know what I'm doing. So this is one dua that I remember he mentioned, and this is in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa'u, wa min qalbin la yakhsha, wa min nafsin la tashba, wa min da'watin la yustajabu laha. The first part was just very interesting, was that, oh Allah, protect me from knowledge that will keep me ignorant, and that's actually something very profound, because when you learn, sometimes you feel like this is the only way, and you feel that I have a power over someone, and then we get lost thinking that we're more righteous or more smarter than someone else, and we become very arrogant, I guess you can say.
Yeah, and there's even a dua that the Prophet ﷺ used to make. He used to say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa'. Oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from knowledge which does not benefit. Wa min qalbin la yakhsha', and from a heart that's not humble, that's not submissive, right, to you. Wa min 'aynin la tadma', and from eyes that don't tear for your sake, right? So that's Jazakallah for sharing that. So now let me give you guys some examples, okay? And you're gonna understand that the scholars, when they hold this opinion that it's okay to intend the dunya, they're not pulling it out of their kufis, right? They're not just making it up, right? They actually have adillah from the Quran and Sunnah of this, all right, for this point. So that's why the majority of scholars, they hold this view that you can intend the dunya, but your primary objective must be to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So where did they get this from? What are the adillah? What are the proofs? If you look at Surah Nuh alayhi salam, he says to his people, he said, فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَارًا. Listen to what Nuh alayhi salam, a prophet, right, perhaps thousands of years ago, right, he said to his people, فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَارًا. Nuh alayhi salam making dua to Allah, he says, oh Allah, I said to my people that seek Allah's forgiveness, He is Ghaffar, He forgives all sins. Right? يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا. Right? I told them, oh Allah, I told my people that if they seek Allah's forgiveness, Allah will send down abundant rain for them. Is that a dunyawi benefit? Is that a benefit of the dunya to get a lot of rain? Absolutely. Nuh alayhi salam told his people, if you ask Allah to forgive you, Allah will send down rain for you. So in other words, he's giving these people an incentive. Right? He's giving these people some motivation that you're going to get rain if you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you. Right? And then he says, وَيُمْدِدُكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا. And he's going to give you money. He's going to give you wealth, amwal, and he's going to give you banin, he's going to give you children. Right? And then he's going to bless you with gardens, and he's going to bless you with rivers. Right? So Nuh alayhi salam clearly told his people that if you seek Allah's forgiveness, Allah will do all of these things in the dunya for you. So in other words, what is he trying to show the people? That these are dunya benefits, benefits from the dunya that you're going to get if you do this act of worship. So he's giving them an incentive. So if there was somebody from the people of Nuh, and he's like, you know what? Wow, I'm going to get children, I'm going to get wealth, I'm going to get all of this. Would he be wrong for intending that? No, because Nuh alayhi salam is telling him that that's what you're going to get. Right? So, and that's obviously a benefit of the dunya. So this is one of the proofs of the scholars that they say that you can intend the dunya as long as your primary objective is to please Allah. Another proof that they use is the ayah in Surah Al-Talaq where Allah He says, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. And whoever has the taqwa of Allah, whoever is conscious of Allah, whoever is wary of Allah, Allah will find a way out for him. Allah will find a way out for him. So let's say you're in a sticky situation, you're in a bad situation, you're in poverty, and you know what, I want to have taqwa so Allah can get me out of this situation. Isn't that a situation of the dunya? Right? Isn't that a dunya benefit for you to get out of poverty? Right? And obviously it is. Another proof that the scholars use is Allah Azza wa Jal, He says when it comes to the Hajj, Allah He says, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَبْتَغُوا فَضْلًا مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. When Allah talks about Hajj in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah He says that there is no sin upon you to seek the bounty of your Lord. And what was this ayah revealed about? It was revealed about making money at the Hajj, to do trade while you're at Hajj. So let's say, for example, I'm going to go to Mecca to make Hajj. Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying that there is no sin upon you to seek the bounty of your Lord while making Hajj. So when I go, to make Hajj, I can also have a niyyah that, I want to take some American products to go sell it over there. Isn't that a dunya benefit? Right? But your primary objective must be to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your Hajj and not just to make money. Right? So according to this verse, Allah is allowing a dunya benefit. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He also says that وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Allah He says, and if the people of the cities, if they only had the taqwa of Allah, they only had the belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the fear of Allah, Allah will send down the blessings of the heavens and the earth. Right? Allah will send down rain for them. Allah will send down vegetation from the earth for them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them these dunya benefits because of their iman, because of their sincerity and their belief to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's also another verse that Allah He says in Surah Al-Nahl that مَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا مِّن ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى. Whoever does a righteous deed, whether he be male or female, what is Allah saying? فَلَنُحْيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبًا. We will give him a good life. So is it wrong for me to want to pray, but at the same time I want to have a good life in this dunya? Is it wrong for me to do that? No, because Allah is telling you that He will give you a good life, right? And for example, there's a hadith that says that لا ينقص مال من صدقة, that sadaqah never depletes your wealth. So let's say I want to give sadaqah, and I know that I'm going to get my money back. I'm going to get back this money that I gave for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can I intend to get my money back? That I want to do this so my money can grow. Right? Can I do that? There's nothing wrong with that, because the Prophet, he tells us that. There's another example. There's another example where the Prophet ﷺ tells us, it's in Bukhari and Muslim. He says, "Man sarrahu an yubsata alayhi rizquhu aw yunsha'a fi atharihi falyasil rahimah." The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever wants to have a lot of wealth, right? Whoever wants to have a lot of provisions, and he wants to have a long life, let him maintain the ties of kinship. The Prophet ﷺ is giving you a benefit from the dunya, that if you maintain the ties of kinship, which is an ibadah, you'll also get a long life and you're going to get a lot of wealth. So can I now call my grandma who I have not spoken to in a long time, call my mom, my dad, so that in my mind I'm also intending to get a dunya benefit of getting a long life and getting a lot of wealth? Can I do that? If it's haram, then why the Prophet is telling us that benefit that we're going to get if we do this ibadah? Right? So, and there's many examples of this as well. Let me give you one that's very clear, especially when it comes to teaching the Quran and doing ruqyah. There's a hadith in Bukhari, right? Where the Sahaba, they were like out, they were traveling, and they passed by some people. And when they passed by these people, somebody from these people, they came and they asked the Sahaba. They said, does any one of you know ruqya? Does any one of you know how to cure people of sickness? So one Sahabi, he goes and he says, I know. So then he goes over to the people, and the man who was sick, he got stung by a scorpion. So the Sahabi went, and the hadith is in Bukhari, right? I'm not making this up. The Sahabi goes and he recites Surah Al-Fatiha. He recites Surah Al-Fatiha. So the Sahabi, he also got some sheep in return. He got some dunya benefits, right? Benefits from the dunya. He got some animals. So when he came back to his friends, the other Sahaba were like, bro, no. The hadith mentions فَكَرِهُ ذَلِكَ, that they dislike that. He said, how could you take this, these sheep for doing ibadah, for reciting Surah Al-Fatiha? Surah Al-Fatiha is Quran, it's pure ibadah, right? You're worshipping Allah by reciting Quran. How can you take sheep? So they took him to the Prophet ﷺ, and they said, oh Messenger of Allah, this guy, he got sheep and he got this and he got that, right? So then the Prophet ﷺ asked the Sahabi that, how did you know, right? How did you know that Surah Al-Fatiha was a ruqya that it could cure people? A benefit we get from this is Surah Al-Fatiha can cure physical ailments, right? The Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba who brought this guy to the Prophet ﷺ, they were probably expecting him to say like, A'udhu Billah, your ibadah should only be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Reciting Quran and ruqya should only be done sincerely, no money. The Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? He says, Inna ahaqqa ma akhadhtum alayhi ajra kitabullah. He said the thing that deserves to be taken money for the most is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? In other words, the thing that is most befitting for you to take money for you to take a reward for, is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a clear hadith. Now, is the Prophet ﷺ telling the man that he should only want the money? No. Obviously, this man's intention, the Prophet ﷺ knows from him that he's doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if there's a benefit that comes to you, right, and you're not only doing the ibadah for that, then it's permissible to take that benefit. So that's why you have somebody who's an imam of a masjid. There's nothing wrong with that. Right, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a problem. There's a problem here. There's a hadith in Abu Dawud, Nasa'i, Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah, right? Where Uthman ibn Abi al-As, okay? He came to the Prophet ﷺ from another town. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, he said, O Messenger of Allah, Ij'alni imama qawmi. He said, O Messenger of Allah, make me the imam of my people. Right? I mean, think about this. This man, he wants status. Does the Prophet ﷺ tell him no? Like, no, you can't have status. No. You should be humble. No, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, قَالَ أَنْتَ إِمَامُهُمْ. He said that you're their imam. Because of course, Uthman radiallahu anhu, this is not Uthman ibn Affan, this is Uthman ibn Abi al-As, a different Sahabi. Right? The Prophet ﷺ said that you are their imam. So it's okay to seek leadership, obviously, if someone is qualified and, there's no one better to do it. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. Now, obviously, it's best not to. Right? It's best not to. Because of course there's a lot of fitna in leadership, right? There's a lot of trials and tribulations that you're going to have to deal with. And you're responsible in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a situation of leadership, right? But the Prophet ﷺ told him that you are their imam. Now the Prophet ﷺ also tells him, وَاتَّخِذْ مُؤَذِّنًا لَا يَأْخُذُ عَلَىٰ أَذَانِهِ أَجْرًا. And take a mu'adhin who does not take any money. He doesn't take any reward. Okay? So how do we reconcile this hadith with the other hadiths that allow a person to take a reward for the Quran? But the Prophet ﷺ is telling this Sahabi that get a mu'adhin, right? When you lead the prayer, get a mu'adhin who doesn't take any ajr, who doesn't take any reward. How do we, reconcile between those two things? Yeah, it's a Sahih hadith, absolutely, yes. How do you reconcile between this hadith and the hadith about the ruqya? The Prophet ﷺ said that the best thing that you could take money for is the book of Allah. How do you reconcile between those two things? It's a tricky one, and that's why some scholars, they say that making adhan, it's haram to take money for making adhan. Right? Some scholars mention this, right? Shawkani mentioned this, other scholars, yeah.
I think the intention of this Sahaba was different, but he had been offered that.
The Prophet is not speaking about any particular Sahabi. The Prophet is giving orders to the leader that when you go back to your people, that appoint a mu'adhin who doesn't take any money.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, the way how I understand the hadith is that the Sahabi, the intention is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes. But he has been offered that, and since he's been offered it, he just accepted.
Okay, good, that he should just accept it, right? Okay, that's a very good point, right? That's coming up to one of the answers that I was going to mention. How else can you reconcile this? Does it mean that if someone is a mu'adhin, you have many famous mu'adhins around the world and they work for the masjid and they get paid for it because, obviously, I mean, listen, realistically, right? Could you find someone that you could rely upon to call the adhan 5 times a day? And that's a huge responsibility, right? Because the people are going to be breaking their fast according to how you call your adhan. People are going to be praying salah, so it's a huge responsibility. And that's why, many of the scholars, they say that the reward of the mu'adhin is greater than the reward of the imam. Because it's harder. It's much more difficult. Obviously, with timetables, it's now easy. But back then, the mu'adhin was in charge of looking at the sky, looking at the time of the salah. So everybody's salah would be dependent on him. It's a huge responsibility. So imagine, how, in 2019, do you think it is even possible for us to find, somebody who's going to call the adhan on point? He knows how to call the adhan. He knows the fiqh of the adhan, right? He's skilled, he has a beautiful voice. He has a loud voice. The Prophet would appoint Bilal radiallahu anhu because he had a louder voice. So do you think that it is even possible for us to find someone 5 times a day without fail, right? Who has this great responsibility and he's, able to do that, right? Without getting, compensated for it, right? Could somebody really work a full-time job taking care of wife and kids and bills and all of this, especially where we live, with doing all of that? No, perhaps not. Right? So this is why some scholars, they say that the meaning of this, the way that they reconcile this and all of the previous verses of the Quran and the hadiths that I've mentioned, they say that what it means is that don't take a mu'adhin who will not call adhan except if you give him money. In other words, don't take a mu'adhin whose primary goal is to get the money. Right? But if he's getting something to make his adhan better, so that he wouldn't have to worry about the dunya, he wouldn't have to worry about a job, that he could focus all of his energy and all of his time on the adhan, there's nothing wrong with somebody doing that. Right? So, this is very, very interesting because, okay, so the question is, how do we reconcile between the fact that that you can take a dunya benefit, right? While having the main intention to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we say that is the principle, then how do we reconcile between that and the hadith where the Prophet commands the leader of the people that don't take take an imam who does not take any money? Because if it's okay to take money, then why is he saying that don't take an imam that wants to take money? How do we reconcile between those two things?
Unless his intention is purely just for the sake of money, or is it?
Well, some scholars, they explain this hadith and they try to find a way out, try to find a way to reconcile between both. How do you reconcile all of the texts that we've just mentioned and this particular hadith about adhan? Take a mu'adhin who doesn't take any money. So how do you reconcile between those two things? Right? Because we have to understand that sometimes you have hadiths that contradict, but the contradiction is not actual; it's apparent. It's apparent, right? Like for example, sometimes you see, two things. You think they're contradicting, but then when it's explained to you, you understand that there's no contradiction between them. Alhamdulillah, there's no contradiction in reality, but sometimes the contradiction may be relative. It may be contradictory to, for example, Muhammad and Zayd, 2 random people, for example, right? A hadith may be, 2 hadiths may be contradictory to Zayd, but to Muhammad it may not be because he has knowledge of it. So we have to understand that contradiction in all of the Islamic texts, the authentic Islamic texts, that there's no such thing as actual contradiction. There's only apparent contradiction, right? So one may say that these 2 hadiths or these 2 issues here, this hadith and all of the other texts, that there is some apparent contradiction there. How do we show that there actually isn't any contradiction? The scholars, they interpret the hadith about the adhan. They say that the Prophet, when he says to take a mu'adhin who doesn't take any money, that means that take a mu'adhin who will call the adhan whether you give him money or not. Right? His primary objective is not to take money. Right? So you look at this hadith in light of the general principles, and then there's no issue, alhamdulillah. Right? So for example, like we've mentioned, if someone wants to do an action and he wants to get some, he wants to get health, he wants to fast, and he also wants to get health that naturally comes along with the deed, right? Then there's no problem in that, right? Someone who is an imam and that's his job, and he also Yeah. So So this is clear. Right? The person, if they're getting a worldly benefit, their primary objective must be to please Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Right. So inshallah Taala, this is clear. Right. Now moving on, let's talk about the fiqh aspect of it. When can you intend to do an act of worship with two intentions and only do one action and get the reward for both of those intentions that you're making, right? Both of those actions that you're intending, right? So for example, can you pray one salah and have an intention to pray two salahs and get the reward for both, right? Now there's a lot of difference of opinion on this particular issue. Some scholars say that you can't do it, other scholars say that you can, right? But inshallah ta'ala, it is allowed. Okay, because of generality of the text, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he says that إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The actions are only by their intentions. So if someone has an intention, or they have multiple intentions and it's one act, then it can suffice for both of those intentions, right? Now there's certain conditions that the scholars mention, right? Certain conditions are, there's some ikhtilaf, are these conditions valid or not? I don't want to get into that. But these are generally the conditions, inshallah ta'ala. The first condition, Ibn Rajab mentions this, both actions must be from the same type, right? So for example, does it make sense for me to pray salah and intend to fast at the same time? No, that doesn't make any sense, right? For example, let me give you one scenario and you could just keep this in your mind where it's permissible to do this. If I'm coming in the masjid and I want to pray tahiyyat al-masjid and it's dhuhr time, and I could pray the 2 rak'ahs before dhuhr or the 4 rak'ahs before dhuhr, can I pray, or let's say another scenario, let's say it's fajr time. I'm coming into the masjid to pray fajr. Now before salat al-fajr, the iqamah is in 5 minutes. I only have time to pray 2 rak'ahs before 5 minute comes, right? So can I pray 2 rak'ahs and intend that that's tahiyyat al-masjid and also intend that that's a sunnah of fajr? Can I do that? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes, and we'll talk about why. When you look at the conditions, it's going to follow under all of the conditions. Okay? So the first condition is the sunnah of fajr and tahiyyat al-masjid, are they one type of worship? They're both salah. Right? They're both salah, right? So it fulfills that condition. Number 2 is that one of the acts of worship cannot be dependent on the other. Right? One of the acts of worship, if I want to intend to do 2 acts of worship with one of those acts of worship cannot be dependent on the other. So is tahiyyat al-masjid dependent on sunnah of fajr, or is the sunnah of fajr dependent on tahiyyat al-masjid? Do they have any relationship with each other? Not at all, right? So that fulfills that second condition. The third condition is that one of the acts of worship is not a specific act of worship, right? If you want to combine your intentions, right, 2 intentions of 2 acts of worship, right? One of the acts of worship, they cannot be a specific act of worship. Now, what does that mean, right? When you look at the scenario of tahiyyat al-masjid, the Prophet ﷺ says that when one of you enters the masjid, he cannot sit until he prays 2 rak'ahs. Did the Prophet ﷺ tell us what 2 rak'ahs it is? So that means that whatever 2 rak'ahs someone prays, as long as they pray 2 rak'ahs, then it would suffice them. So because of this hadith, the scholars, they say that tahiyyat al-masjid is not a specific act of worship, right? That something else can take its place. That what the Sharia wants is just the 2 rak'ahs are prayed and that's it. Right? So if someone prays if someone prays a sunnah of fajr and they want to intend that they pray tahiyyat al-masjid at the same time, can they be together? Absolutely. Because the sunnah of fajr can take the place of tahiyyat al-masjid. Is everybody clear on this? Right? I think the clearest example is the example of tahiyyat al-masjid. Right? So I think, and this is the most practical. Sometimes you come in the masjid and, sometimes some brothers are praying like a tarawih before salat al-fajr. They're praying this, and then they're praying this, they're praying this, they're praying that. Listen, you can join tahiyyat al-masjid with the sunnah of fajr, and then you'll be good. Just pray 2 rak'ahs with both intentions, and alhamdulillah, you're good. Right? So let me give you some examples of of scenarios where it would be permissible. There's a hadith that tells us that whoever makes wudu, right? That whoever makes wudu and then he prays 2 rak'ahs afterwards, and he doesn't think about anything in his salah, he doesn't talk to himself in the salah, that all of his deeds will be forgiven. Right? And the scholars refer to this as a sunnah of wudu. The Prophet ﷺ just told us that whoever makes wudu and then he prays 2 rak'ahs. Did he say which 2 rak'ahs it is? It could be any 2 rak'ahs. So because of that, the scholars, they say that this act of worship is not a specific act of worship. So you can join any other 2 rak'ahs with this one. So if I have to pray, for example, example, let's say I make wudu and the Imam is praying Salatul Fajr. It's a fard prayer. He's praying Salatul Fajr. Is Salatul Fajr 2 rak'ahs? It is. So if I make wudu and I want to pray 2 rak'ahs, can Salatul Fajr take the place of those 2 rak'ahs? It can, right? So in that case, I can join those two acts of worship with one deed and have both of those intentions and get both of the rewards, right? And the scholars mentioned that, with this, a person can maximize their ajr, maximize their rewards. Now, it's not every situation that you could do this. What if someone wants to combine the sunnah of Fajr and Salatul Fajr? 2 rak'ahs and 2 rak'ahs. They want to just do one set of 2 rak'ahs and then they're good. The answer is no. Why? Because they are dependent on each other. Right? The only reason why you're praying the Sunnah of Fajr is because of Salatul Fajr. If it wasn't for that, then you wouldn't be praying the Sunnah of Fajr. So because of that, you must pray it. You must pray it before separately. Another issue is that can you combine? Okay, so time. All right, so we're gonna stop now. And of course, listen. There's a lot of issues.
We can continue the Q&A session after Isha if you want.
Maybe if you guys want to stick around, to mention some more examples or to ask, whatever questions. Then no problem. After the salah, there's no problem with that, inshallah. Yeah. But we'll just stop here, inshallah ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.